Good morning, everyone. I just got back from New York yesterday, and on Wednesday and Thursday there was this thick cloud of smoke all over Brooklyn where I was. And of course everyone knows what happened. There was wildfires in Canada, and the smoke traveled all the way to New York. And people were told to be careful, stay indoors. Everyone was wearing masks in the street. And it taught me a very powerful lesson. You know, we all know that we have three things we need to live. We need food, water, and air. Now there's kosher food, there's kosher liquids, drinks that are not kosher. But when it comes to air, what is kosher air? All air seems to be kosher. But here we see that sometimes there could be non-kosher air. There could be polluted air that's not good for you. And that's what we find in this week's Torah portion. We find the story of Miriam speaking gossip about her brother Moses, and God punishing her with leprosy. And she's quarantined from the camp of Israel for 7 days. And indeed, Moses prays for the healing of his sister Miriam. And what the Torah is teaching us is not to speak gossip, because gossip pollutes the air. And it affects not just you as the speaker, but all those around you who listen. And especially today, where words can travel very far through social media and the internet, the bad polluted air in one country could literally travel to another country and to every country around the world. But here we find something interesting. That when Miriam was quarantined outside the camp of Israel, it says the entire nation waited for her to recover and return before they traveled on. And Rashi says, why did everyone wait for her? Why did they give her such a great honor? Because when Moses was a little baby and was placed in the Nile, the Torah tells us that Miriam stood at the Nile and watched over her baby brother. And when the daughter of Pharaoh came to the water to bathe, she intervened and helped rescue her brother's life. And so now, 80 years later, when she's quarantined, the whole nation waits for her to show her gratitude for waiting for her baby brother and watching over him. But the question is, why did Miriam's reward for watching over her baby brother come 80 years later? Why didn't God reward her earlier? And one of the commentaries gives a very interesting answer, why God waited 80 years. Because when Miriam watched over her baby brother, it was a great act of righteousness. She watched over her baby brother. But 80 years later, when they realized who Moses was, that this baby grew up to be the greatest leader of the generation, not just of that generation, but of all Jewish generations. The leader who took the Jews out of Egypt, brought the Torah from God down to earth from Mount Sinai, the one who led them to the promised land. Now in hindsight, in retrospect, they were able to see that this act of kindness was much greater than originally thought, because not only was this saving a life, a fellow Jew's life, but saving the life of the one who would be the most important leader in all of Jewish history. And this is true in all of our lives. Every time an act of goodness and kindness is done, it has a positive effect on the world, on ourselves and everyone around us. But sometimes it's only with distance of time that we could look back in hindsight and realize later the extent of the goodness and the kindness and the positive impact it had. Something that at the time it occurred, we didn't fully comprehend the scope and the magnitude of the good deed we had done. There's a story told by Rabbi Moskowitz, who was a Chabad rabbi in Chicago, that one time he and his wife were driving in a dangerous neighborhood, not such a good neighborhood in Chicago, and their car ran out of gas. Rabbi Moskowitz didn't know what to do. It was near the exit. He said, I have to go get gas. So he told his wife to lock the car doors, and he's going to walk and buy gas. So he's walking to the gas station off the ramp. A car pulls up. At first he was frightened. Then the guy opens the window and says, hey, Rabbi, do you need a lift? He looks in. He didn't know if he should get a ride from this guy or not. But then the guy says, come, I'll give you a hand, Rabbi. It's a mitzvah. So he gets in the car. He says to him, are you Jewish? He says, no. He says, how do you know what a mitzvah is? He says, I'll tell you, I was at this and this university in Chicago, and I had a Jewish roommate. And whenever the rabbi needed a minyan, he would come knocking on the door to get my roommate to make the minyan. And sometimes when my friend wasn't there, I said, Rabbi, I'll come make the prayer service. And he said, no, only if, a Jew could make that minyan. He said, I always felt bad that I couldn't do the mitzvah. He says, now I saw a rabbi stranded. I said, oh, finally a mitzvah I can do. And sure enough, he drove Rabbi Moskowitz to the gas station, filled up his canister with gas, drove him back to his car, and he was on his way. When that rabbi was knocking on the door looking for a Jew to do a mitzvah to make a minyan, he didn't understand how far that good deed would travel and that it would come to help someone else down the road. We never know the impact and the influence we have on the world around us. And therefore, every mitzvah should be seized because, like with Miriam, we never know the full scope of a good deed. And sometimes